this third video in the series of how to read music, we're going to talk about subdivisions and counting music notation. So far, we learned about the math that's involved in reading music. Very, very important, because we need to understand the value. As we spoke about in the first two videos, each bar has to have a certain amount of value. What we're going to do today is, now that you know the math involved, we're going to get towards our goal of being able to read these bars of music, rather than just know the math. But the first thing we need to do before we can read is we have to learn what subdivisions are. That means subdivisions of the pulse, and how to count and feel them. So for our purposes today, we're not going to work with the three parts that every note has, which is attack, duration, and pitch, which is on one of the previous videos. We're only going to work with the first, with the attack of a note, so we don't have to worry about how long they sustain for. Also, in the rules of counting, there are four. The pulse always gets the count. That's the number, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. If you subdivide the pulse into two equal parts, then you would count that as 1 and, 2 and, 3 and so forth. If you subdivide the pulse into three equal parts, you would count that as 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, and so forth. And if you subdivide the pulse into four equal parts, you would count that as 1 E and 2 E and so forth. Now you could subdivide the pulse further, but for now we're going to talk about the first four subdivisions of a pulse. And we're not going to deal with note values at all. We're just going to deal with sounds and cutting up the sounds into 2, 3, or 4 parts. Now for my pulse, I'm going to have the assistance of a metronome. A pulse is a steady beat, so here we go. Slow this down. This happens to be a tempo that I'm choosing. Could be any, pulse could be any tempo. So on this page on top, we have the pulse on the top line, second line subdividing it into 2 parts, third line 3 parts, the fourth line 4 parts. On the second page, we have the same. The top line is the pulse, the second line is subdividing it into 2 parts, the third line subdividing it into 3 parts, and the fourth line 4 parts. The difference between the two pages is the first page, when we're subdividing, we're playing every one of the subdivisions, and the second page, we're leaving some spaces, but we still need to count them. So here we go. The pulse, we're going to be having 4 pulses in each bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to subdivide the pulse into 2 equal parts. Now this is what we need to feel. What is the feeling of dividing a pulse into 2 equal parts? And here we go, this line here. We know the pulse is counted 1, 2, 3, 4. If I subdivide it into 2 equal parts, the rule says you count it 1 and. Here we go. 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, 4 and. That's the second line. The third line, you count, when you subdivide into 3 equal parts, you counted 1 triplet. Here we go. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. And the fourth line, subdividing the pulse into 4 equal parts, 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. Now on the second page, the same exercise, only we're leaving some spaces. Now you'll notice, wherever there's an X, I am not going to play. That I'm leaving as a space. So the first line is the pulse. 1, 2, I'm playing the pulse. 3, 4. The second line is cutting the pulse up, subdividing it into 2 equal parts, but leaving some spaces. So it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's the second line with spaces. The third line, subdividing the pulse into 3 equal parts with spaces. The first one has all of the hits. The second one has a space on the middle. I don't know if you can see the X there, but we're leaving a space in the middle. The third one has a space on the end, and the fourth one has a space at the beginning and the end. So remember, when we subdivide the pulse into 3 equal parts, we count 1 triplet for each pulse. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, here we go, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 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 4 triplet. The last line is subdividing the pulse into 4 equal parts. We count 1 E and a. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. Now if you notice, I did not assign any of these a particular note value. They're just sounds, and I represented them by little black dots. Depending on the time signature, that will determine what the note value is. So if my time signature is 4/4, then I'm talking about 4 quarter notes per bar. Let's shut the metronome for a minute. So if my time signature is 4/4, that means 4 quarter notes per bar. So my pulse would be quarter notes, and my subdivision into 2 parts would be eighth notes, and so forth. That we learned on one of the previous videos. For now, have fun with this exercise. Learn first how to subdivide the pulse into 2, 3, or 4 parts with no spaces. Learn what that feels like. And then second, leave spaces. Do the ones that I left out, and then make your own up. Have fun with it, and before long, we'll be able to apply all of these rules that you're learning to reading actual music. Have a good day.